Welcome, everyone, to What's Hot in the Bookstore. I'm Megan Riley.
And I'm Rain Brooks. It's great to be here.
Today, we're kicking off a brand new podcast episode focusing on, well, a true giant of the fantasy genre.
We really are. We're talking about a trilogy that isn't just a story. It's practically foundational DNA for so much modern fantasy.
Yeah.
Think sagas, think video games. Its influence is huge.
Absolutely. So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to give you a really detailed, hopefully enticing preview of the Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman.
That's right. The whole saga. Dragons of Autumn Twilight, Dragons of Winter Night, and Dragons of Spring Dawning.
And this isn't just any fantasy series. It's one of those rare birds that jumped straight from the tabletop gaming world into massive literary success.
Exactly. It basically became a cultural touchstone when it first came out back in the 1980s. Kind of set a new standard for blending, fast-paced action with really deep character stuff.
Right. So for you listening, our goal is simple. We want to give you the context, the key insights, basically everything you need to understand why this trilogy is still considered such a must-read classic.
Yeah, whether you read it years ago and need a little nudge to revisit it, or maybe you've never even heard of the world of Krynn before, we want to show you where the magic is.
Okay, so let's start with that legacy, the world of Krynn. It's impossible to overstate how important this series was, and still is, right?
Oh, definitely. The story of Krynn is completely tangled up with the history of fantasy itself.
When we talk about these three books, Autumn Twilight, Winter Night, Spring Dawning, we're talking about high fantasy that didn't just exist in the 80s. It sort of actively shaped what epic storytelling could even be.
Yeah, it really cemented the idea that you could have this grand, sweeping epic, but keep it moving fast, keep it driven by the characters and how they interact.
And a big part of that, historically speaking, was how it bridged the gap between pen and paper role-playing games.
Dungeons and Dragons, specifically.
Right, D&D.
Yeah.
It bridged that gap between the game and, actual sophisticated novel writing.
Before Dragonlance, a lot of the novels based on D&D felt, well, a bit scattered. Episodic, maybe.
Yeah, disjointed.
Exactly. Weis and Hickman took the core D&D elements, the magic, the monsters, the classes, and wove them into this single, compelling, massive story. It basically proved that the whole TTRPG novel thing could really work.
And that structure is so key, isn't it? These three books form one complete journey.
One unified arc. It respects your time as a reader. You get a beginning, a middle, and a really satisfying end.
So tell us about the world itself. Krynn, what's the vibe?
Well, Krynn is a world that feels old. It's saturated with powerful magic, gods who are maybe not as involved as they used to be, majestic dragons, obviously, and lots of ancient secrets buried deep.
And when the story kicks off, things aren't exactly great in Krynn, are they?
No, not at all. Critically, the story starts during an era called the Long Sleep.
The long sleep, that sounds ominous.
It is. It sets the whole tone, really. It's this period where the gods seem to have just vanished, pulled back from the world.
And the biggest impact of that is the loss of the true clerics, right? The healers, the conduits of divine power.
Precisely. Their disappearance is maybe the most devastating blow. It fundamentally shakes the world's faith. Imagine a world where divine healing, actual miracles, just stop happening.
Yeah, that would create a huge vacuum.
It does. Faith crumbles. People become cynical, skeptical. So when the real threat arrives, the return of the Dark Queen, Dekisis and her dragon armies, nobody is prepared, especially not spiritually.
There's this vacuum of faith, this lack of divine guidance.
Which forces the heroes to rely entirely on themselves, their own courage, their often flawed plans, and eventually this desperate search to maybe rekindle that lost faith.
And the catalyst for all this world-shattering drama is surprisingly mundane, isn't it?
It really is. It starts with just friends getting back together. This group of companions, they've been apart for years, doing their own things. They agree to meet up in their old hometown, Solace.
Just a reunion. Maybe grab a drink at the end of the last home.
Exactly. You expect some reminiscing, maybe a few arguments, but Krynn has other plans.
Right. Things escalate quickly.
Very quickly. They run into this young woman who needs help carrying a mysterious staff,
Yeah.
and suddenly they're caught up in this massive brewing conflict, the War of the Lands.
So this simple reunion turns into them being plunged right into this ancient battle between light and darkness facing down the Dragon High Lords.
It's quite the shift, from catching up to saving the world.
I always think the pacing and the style are just brilliant. Weis and Hickman somehow tell this classic, heroic fantasy story.
All the expected elements are there. Prophecy, quests, big battles.
Yeah, but it never feels like a cliche. It doesn't feel dusty or derivative. It feels, I don't know, urgent, alive.
That dynamic balance is really the key, I think. It's
Yeah.
what sets it apart from a lot of other fantasy from that time and even now.
You mean how it mixes the quiet moments with the action?
Exactly. You get those necessary quiet bits. The exposition dumps, sure.
Yeah.
But also characters just arguing around a campfire, revealing secrets, building tension, those atmospheric moments.
But then it cuts loose.
Oh, yeah. You get genuinely funny interactions, often thanks to a certain kender we'll probably talk about.
Oh, Tasselhoff, definitely.
And then, bam, it slams you into these huge battle scenes that feel really cinematic. You could almost see them playing out. The scope, the energy, it's all there.
It ends up being this perfect fantasy roller coaster because it weaves the big stuff, the gods, the dragons, the world-ending threats, so seamlessly with the small stuff, the personal stories.
Right. You find yourself just as invested in whether two characters will sort out their feelings as you are in the massive war effort against the Dragon High Lords.
The internal conflicts, the romance, the sacrifices these specific people make,
Yeah.
it all feels just as important as the epic battles.
And that all works because the creative team behind it was just so perfectly matched. Which brings us nicely to Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman.
Yes. Let's talk about them, because understanding their backgrounds really explains why this collaboration was like lightning in a bottle.
They had different but really complementary skills.
Okay, so Margaret Weis, born in 1948, her start was at TSR, right? The D&D publisher.
That's right. She was an editor there, so she knew narrative structure inside and out. But her real superpower, the thing that gives the Chronicles its heart, is character development.
Creating characters you really care about.
Deeply. And crafting plots with real emotional weight. She's the reason the epic scale feels grounded in, human or elven or dwarven feeling. She makes these huge struggles relatable, even when they're literally fighting dragons.
Okay, then Tracy Hickman, born 1955. His contribution was more about the big picture.
Yeah, structural brilliance, you could say. He was designing a lot of those early, really successful D&D adventure modules. And he had this groundbreaking idea for the time.
Which was?
Structuring RPG adventures like actual stories. Not just a series of random rooms and monsters, but with a proper beginning, rising action, a climax, a satisfying ending.
Bringing a novelist's sense of arc to the gaming table.
Precisely. And then he brought that same thinking, that blueprint, for a satisfying narrative journey to the novels.
So you put Weiss's knack for character and emotion together with Hickman's genius for plot and epic pacing.
And you get something completely new. That synergy is what made it work so well.
Their collaboration in the 80s didn't just sell books, it fundamentally changed the fantasy landscape.
And the books have this feeling, this role-playing spontaneity, you could call it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because they came from that gaming background, they weren't afraid to let the story take unexpected turns, driven by the characters making choices, sometimes really bad choices, rather than just following a rigid plot outline.
It feels less predictable that way.
Exactly. And that spontaneity feels genuine because, famously, parts of the original story actually came out of actual D&D sessions they ran.
Wait, really? They played it out first?
Some of it, yeah. The characters, some major plot points,
Yeah.
they emerged from that shared improvised creativity. So the story doesn't feel like it's being dictated to you. It feels like an adventure you're discovering alongside the characters. Often messy, sometimes scary, definitely unpredictable.
That must have allowed them to take some risks, too, like creating the Kender race.
Oh, absolutely. Tasselhoff, Burfoot, and his kin,
Yeah.
inherently chaotic, sometimes infuriating characters. A big narrative risk.
But it pays off huge, right? Essential comic relief, but also agents of genuine, unpredictable change in a very dark story.
Totally. And the result of all this? Millions and millions of books sold, translated into dozens of languages, and crucially, influencing a whole generation of writers and game designers who came after them.
They showed writers how to structure epic stories that still felt personal, and game designers how to weave deeper narratives into their games.
And part of that success comes down to the writing style, too, doesn't it? It's very accessible.
Yeah, it's visual, but not dense. They don't bog you down with pages and pages of description like some older fantasy can.
The world building is super efficient. Krynn comes alive with just a few really well-chosen details. You instantly get a feel for the enchanted forests, the dark castles, the tense marketplaces. The atmosphere is just there.
And they keep things moving. There are no real lulls, are there? Every scene seems to push things forward.
Right. No long-winded passages that just stall the plot.
Yeah.
Every conversation, every description, it either moves the main story, the war effort, the quest forward, or it digs deeper into a character's head, their relationships, their internal struggles.
It's just really tight professional storytelling. Never feels like it drags.
Which I think brings us right back to the absolute core of why this trilogy still works so well after all these years.
The characters.
The characters. The setting is great, the plot is epic, but it's the companions that make you stick around.
I completely agree. The dragons are cool, the magic is cool, the gods are imposing, but the heart and soul of Dragonlance is that central group. Tanis, Durm, Flint, Tass, Raceland, Caramon, Goldmoon, Riverwind.
And the reason they endure, I think, is because they're not perfect. They're not the shining, flawless heroes you might expect.
No, they're messy. They're layered, deeply flawed, often carrying serious baggage from their pasts.
That imperfection is what makes them real, isn't it? They're not always on the same page. They argue a lot. They mistrust each other sometimes. They make some truly boneheaded decisions along the way.
It's like a dysfunctional family on a road trip, but the road trip involves saving the world.
Exactly. And that friction, that messy dynamic, makes them so much more relatable than a band of perfect heroes would be.
And it makes their moments of triumph, when they do manage to overcome their issues and work together, feel so much more earned.
Absolutely. They grow so much over the 3 books. They really earn their heroism, often through pretty painful experiences.
We should probably talk about some of those specific characters and their arcs, because they really highlight the complexity we mentioned earlier.
Definitely. Readers always talk about Flint Fireforge, the grumpy old dwarf with a heart of gold.
Protective of everyone, constantly complaining.
And Tasselhoff Burfoot, the kender. Eternally optimistic, maybe a bit naive, and compulsively sticky-fingered.
They provide so much of the humor and, honestly, the heart sometimes, the essential grounding elements.
But then you get into the really complex figures where the authors achieve something truly special, like Tanis Half-Elven.
Ah, Tanis. The reluctant leader. Talk about moral ambiguity.
He embodies it perfectly. Torn between his human and elven sides, torn between different loyalties, different loves. His half-elven nature isn't just backstory. It's a constant source of internal conflict for him. Makes him fascinating, if occasionally frustrating.
And then there's Raceland Masher, arguably the most iconic character from the whole series.
Oh, without a doubt. And he is absolutely not a traditional hero.
No way. He's this physically frail, incredibly ambitious, deeply cynical wizard, consumed by his quest for power, partly driven by his own weakness and trauma.
His journey from this frail, bitter apprentice to becoming one of the most powerful and morally compromised figures in the world is just captivating. It's the dark, fascinating anchor of the whole trilogy.
The details stick with you too. The constant coughing, the golden skin, the hourglass eyes that see time and decay. Unforgettable.
And his story really drives home that point about moral complexity. This isn't just good versus evil.
Not at all. Raceland chooses the path of the black robes, the path of evil magic, but his motivations are so much more complicated than pure malice.
Right. It's tied up in ambition, yes, but also in this desperate need to overcome his physical frailty, to gain power so nothing can hurt him again. It's deeply rooted in his past trauma. He operates entirely in shades of gray. Maybe very dark shades, but still gray.
So if you compare it to other big fantasy epics, maybe something like Narnia, which has a very clear moral compass.
Dragonlance digs much deeper into the messy stuff. The personal betrayals, the consequences of bad choices, the emotional twists that come from characters making difficult, sometimes terrible decisions. It blends that epic scope with really intimate personal drama and tragedy.
And underpinning all this character drama and epic conflict, they needed a solid magic system, which they definitely delivered.
Yeah, the magic isn't just hand-wavy stuff. It's another example of that structural thinking we talked about. It's well-crafted, balanced, and tied directly into the world itself.
It's all about the moons, right?
Exactly. The magic is governed by Krynn's 3 moons, Solinari, Lunitari, and Nuitari. Each one dictates a different path for wizards.
Okay, break that down first. Solinari is the white moon.
Right. It governs the wizards of the White Robes.
Okay.
They focus on benevolent magic, protection, healing. Think good-aligned wizards.
Lunitari is the red moon.
For the Red Robes. They're all about balance, neutrality, seeking knowledge for its own sake, maintaining the equilibrium between good and evil magic.
And Nuitari, the Black Moon, only visible to evil wizards.
That's the one. It guides the Black Robes, like Raistlin. They seek power above all else, often through forbidden or destructive magic, the most feared practitioners.
And the genius part is that this isn't just flavor text, it actually affects their power levels, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A wizard's magic waxes and wanes with the phases of their particular moon. So when Nuitari is full, a black robe like Raistlin is at the peak of his power. But when it's dark, his magic weakens.
That adds a whole tactical layer. They have to time their big spells, plan around the lunar cycles. It puts limits even on the most powerful characters.
And there's another crucial limit, the cost of casting.
Right. Magic isn't free. It takes a toll.
A significant one.
Yeah.
Especially powerful spells, the kind that can turn a battle.
Hmm.
They drain the caster,
Yeah.
physically exhaust them, leave them weak and vulnerable afterwards.
Which stops magic from being the easy answer to every problem. It's not a cheat code.
Exactly. When you see a wizard collapse after unleashing some huge spell, you understand the price they just paid. It keeps the stakes high. Magic is often an act of desperation, of sacrifice, not just overwhelming power.
It really ties back to that idea of structure and consequence. Power needs limits to be interesting.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so we've covered the history, the authors, the world, the incredible characters, the magic. Now, let's get practical. For someone listening right now, maybe on the fence, why should they drop everything and pick up this trilogy today in 2024?
Well, because the things that make it great: friendship, struggle, discovery, hope against overwhelming odds, those things are timeless. They
Yeah.
don't get old.
So if you love that classic high fantasy feel, dragons, knights, magic, prophecies.
This is absolute for you. It delivers all of that. But it's also the perfect entry point if you're new to epic fantasy.
Why is that?
Because you don't need any prior knowledge. You don't need to know decades of expanded universe lore. These 3 books tell one complete self-contained story.
That's a huge plus. You get the entire War of the Lance, from that first reunion in Solace right through to the final showdown with the Dragon Queen to Takhisis, all in 3 volumes.
It's a perfectly satisfying narrative package, start to finish.
And the quality still holds up. I mean, these books are decades old now.
Yeah, absolutely. The enthusiasm from current readers is proof of that. We looked at the customer reviews.
Oh, yeah. What are people saying?
Well, first off, the numbers are just fantastic. Across 411 ratings, the overall score for the Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy is an amazing 4.8 out of 5 stars.
Wow, 4.8 out of 5. For a series from the 80s, that's incredible.
It really is. That kind of sustained high rating over decades tells you something about the fundamental quality of the writing. It's not just nostalgia.
And what about the comments? Any specific things people are pointing out?
Oh yeah, the anecdotes really show the connection people have with these books. You see readers like Laura MacArthur saying it was the first series they ever read purely for the fun of reading.
That's lovely, the series that sparks that lifelong love of reading for someone.
Exactly. Then there's the timeless appeal. We saw a comment from TJ, who first read them as a kid in the 80s, and now, reading them again in his 50s, says the characters and story still resonate just as strongly.
That proves the writing holds up, doesn't it? Structurally, emotionally, it transcends reading trends.
Definitely. And the emotional impact is huge, too. One reviewer, Trish M., gave it 105 stars, which, okay, not mathematically possible, but you get the sentiment.
Aha, yeah, that's high praise.
She said it was because the books made her feel connected to her late father, who also loved fantasy. When a series can create that kind of intergenerational bond, that deep family connection.
Wow.
That's powerful. These aren't just books at that point. They're part of people's lives, their memories.
It's more than just a good read. It's like an anchor point for so many fantasy fans. And the recommendations are just universal.
Like what?
Like Alina Aubrey, a verified buyer, who
Yeah.
basically summed it up for anyone debating getting the series. Just do it. You will not regret it. Simple as that.
Can't argue with that.
So yeah, the verdict seems pretty clear.
The Dragonlance Chronicles are classics for a reason. They nailed the formula for modern heroic fantasy.
Friendship, courage, sacrifice, hope. Even when the world feels abandoned by its gods, it's all in there.
It's a reading experience that genuinely stays with you. It really does. It's that deep dive into another world that, like so many readers said, just resonates long after you finish that last page of Dragons of Spring Dawning.
If you're looking for that definitive, character-first, epic fantasy experience, this is it.
Pure escapism, but with real substance. That mix of Weis's character depth and Hickman's knack for pacing is just Chef's kiss. Irresistible.
So if you want to just completely lose yourself in another world,
A world where ordinary, flawed people have to rise to an extraordinary challenge.
then you really will just devour this trilogy. It's the absolute definition of a satisfying read.
From page 1 of Autumn Twilight to the very end.
And we've made it super easy for you. If this sounds like your cup of tea, your next big read.
You can find the direct link to purchase the Dragonlance Chronicles trilogy right there in the description below this podcast.
Just click that link, grab the books, and get ready to start your own journey to Krynn.
Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for this look back at a true giant of fantasy literature.
It's been a real pleasure. Happy reading, everyone, and we hope you'll join us next time for another episode of What's Hot in the Bookstore.
See you then.